Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of the Confident Hypnotherapist. Today we're going to be chatting with Rob McNeilly, but before we get there, I just want to say a quick thank you to everyone who has kindly sent me a message on Facebook or email or even called to let me know that they're enjoying this podcast series. Thank you very much. One of the things I have noticed that I keep coming back to in that discussion is that I run a Facebook group called the Hypnotherapist Networking Group. And I've been recommending people to go and join that simply because there's a lot of resources in there that people are finding really beneficial to be able to help them in growing to be a confident hypnotherapist themselves. So if you are interested, please go and find that Facebook group and join, as I think you'll find some of the content there really interesting. Today I'm chatting with Rob McNeilly. Now, Rob was absolutely someone I had to speak to in regards to this podcast. And the reason why was back when I was studying to be a hypnotherapist myself. At the end of Cert 4, which was 1 year course, I felt that I was pretty good at what I did. I was pretty confident with where I was at. But I decided to continue on into doing the diploma the following year. And the first lecturer I had when I went back the following year was Rob McNeilly. And what he was able to offer me in my time with him was truly wonderful. It was a very good reminder that hypnosis is not something that you do to a person, but something more so that you do with a person, and that you are helping guide them using their own natural ability into that hypnotic state. And having that responsibility of putting someone into hypnosis taken away from you was a very freeing experience. And for me personally, I have Rob to thank for gently and beautifully teaching that to our class. So I really hope you benefit from our talk today, because Rob is just one of the most genuinely generous and giving souls that you can imagine. And he offers a lot of wisdom in our chat. So sit back and enjoy our chat with Rob McNeilly.
You're already pointing to one of the dilemmas. There are some people in our field who have a reputation. They write books, they run workshops, they're world renowned. And somehow having an identity is conflated with the idea of being effective and being confident. And I'm informed by Scott Miller's humility when he was working at the Brief Therapy Institute of Milwaukee with Insa Kimberg and Peter Shazer. And these people were doing some innovative work. They were writing books, and they were running workshops. And when they brought in someone to measure the effectiveness of what they were doing, to their horror, they discovered that one of the newbies in working in the institute was getting better results than the important people. So just to be confident, like, I'm an important person, isn't necessarily going to be useful. It can take us down a rabbit hole that can, the more you try and explore in that way, the more there is to explore. So I think that there's some areas that have been, in my view, overlooked, and there are areas that we tend to explore, hoping to add to our confidence, which don't necessarily result in that. So I think it's a wonderful topic, and one that I've heard many people wanting to be a hypnotherapist, that they struggle with. And it's really, I think it's an unnecessary struggle. Looking forward to this conversation.
You've been a mentor for many years now for many different people out there. And I imagine that you've seen people come to you to be mentored that have seemingly had that confidence to do amazing work straight up, and then others that have really struggled. What kind of advice do you give those that are struggling in order to be able to help build that confidence? I'm aware that there's no one-size-fits-all response here.
Yeah, I think, to me, Lawrence, there are two areas to explore. um, I'm informed by Fernando Flora's comment that confidence is a result of knowing our competencies and our incompetencies. If we pretend that we can be competent when we're not, and people will kind of like, oh, I'm confident, I can do anything, I can cure everyone. They're dangerous. I remember when I was teaching one of my kids to drive, on about the second or third lesson, she said, can we get onto the highway? I can drive faster there. I started to sweat blood because she was so confident, and I was scared because she wasn't competent. So I think that one area for us to explore if we want to be confident is how to increase our competence. And unfortunately, a lot of the supposition about becoming competent evolves around going to workshops, reading books, learning theories, learning protocols, reading scripts. For me, competence happens in hypnosis like in anything, through personal experience. So I think that if you go to a workshop and you listen to someone and they say, and you think, oh, this person is great, if only I could do that. I spent some time with Milton Erickson towards the end of his life, and that was an experience. But, I thought, oh, I'll never be able to do what he does. And a lot of people who met him had that experience. They're somehow feeling overwhelmed by what he was doing interfered with my ability to learn what was useful and relevant for me. So I think that for me, and perhaps you could reflect on this yourself, about feeling confident resulting or being a function of learning through experience rather than an intellectual understanding.
I absolutely agree with that. Even if I think back to my own training, one of the things I hear from a lot of people about their training is that it can often be quite heavy on the theory and a bit light on the prac. I remember my training with you, and it was a beautiful balance of a bit of theory, but then you would say, go off and practice now. And I think it was an equal amount of practice to theory. And on top of that, I remember realizing in my training with you that, hypnosis was something that we do with the person and not something we do to the person. And as soon as I was able to kind of get my head around that the magic wasn't coming from the words I was saying, but from helping to create a space in which this person can go into their own experience and become absorbed in their own inward focus, that it took the pressure off because I wasn't doing something to them. I was simply observing and ratifying back what was going on.
I think that if we think of hypnosis as like an anesthetic that we're doing to someone, we are the powerful people, we are the wise people, we know, and we're going to, like you say, do this to them. If we can think of hypnosis and any therapy really as an invitation, that's all we can do. All we can do is invite people into an experience, and that's where I think we can learn. That's where our skills can be solidly developed, in learning how to make an invitation that is going to be acceptable to someone. Some people like to be told what to do. Some people, like me, for example, I hate it when someone tells me what to do. If you tell me to do something, you've got to fight to the death. I'm bloody minded about this thing. I blame my Scottish and Irish ancestors for that. But I'm being irresponsible. It's, that's just something that I've got. And it has softened over the years, but it's still, I'm just giving that as an example that for some people, if I trust them completely, then I'm very happy to follow orders. You know, if a surgeon wants to say do this or don't do that, I'll say absolutely. Here I am. I'm good. And it comes, like I mentioned about conversation. If you look at confidence, it comes from the Latin con, together, and fidere, which means to have faith or to trust. So it means faith with or trust with. And for me, that asks the question, with whom? Do we have to trust ourselves? Do we have to trust the client? Do we have to trust the process, the theory? It's an area of exploration, and it doesn't have to be an either-or. But the important thing for me is to realise that it is an issue of trusting. And if we pretend that we are the expert, that's exhausting. If we assume that we have the answer and can cure everyone of all problems, of all situations, it's exhausting. I have enough problem dealing with my own personal issues rather than being an expert at dealing with the whole world. It's like you say, it helps to give up. When you shift that focus, it shifts us from the focus on us and our wisdom and our power and our omnipotence and our skills and wisdom, shifts it from that onto us, onto how's the relationship, how can I help this client to trust me, to trust themselves, to trust the process. It's a shift in focus, which I think is pivotal. And I've noticed so many times people start to experience a genuine, solid confidence when they learn to trust themselves once they're competent, and trust the client that they've got the resources, and trust the process, that no matter what theory we have, if we trust that, that is going to contribute a lot. You know, Erickson said to me, you can always trust a client to be able to go into trance. You can always trust a client to have all the resources they need to resolve their problem. Now, that does not mean that if you do that, you are guaranteed that everyone's going to go into hypnosis. That doesn't mean that you're guaranteed that anyone is going to resolve their issue. But to trust the client is a huge relief. As you pointed out from your personal experience, instead of having to be the expert with the answer, I'm going to do this to you, which is the medical model, and it works very well medically, perfect. If someone's got a broken leg and the orthopedic surgeon says, well, I'm going to be interested to see how you can heal your own leg. I don't think so. You just want to do something to that leg, put it in plaster so it can heal. But that shift of focus from I need to develop a skill and learn more knowledge and more theories so that I can be better equipped, to how can we learn how to listen to clients? How can we learn how to respond to clients? How can we learn to be flexible to deal with the infinite variety of the human beings that come with their suffering? And having that question can be it can be disturbing because there's no security. Like it's a moving feast. You know, when you have that attitude, you never know what's going to happen. But also, you never know what's going to happen. So there's there's less solid ground, but there's more liveliness. There's more vitality. There's more, I would say, more effectiveness too, probably. Yeah. Well, more than at least probably.
You mentioned before, a word that's been popping up a little bit now is competence,
Yes.
Which is a great concept again.
Yeah.
And when I think about competence, especially within hypnotherapists, in fact, I think almost any type of therapist, there can sometimes be almost this binary notion around it. Either I know enough or I don't know enough.
Yeah.
Or I'm good enough to do this or I'm not good enough to do this.
Exactly.
And very little about that learning in the middle, or that kind of accepting that they're on a journey themselves and that they have to take what they've learnt and practice it and run that risk of a fear of failure or things not going like the textbook planned or the textbook said it would. What advice do you have to those people that do kind of get stuck in that black or white thinking about what their skills should be?
Oh, I think the only advice we can give is to go forth and make mistakes. Get it wrong. You know, Jay Haley was, when he was running training workshops for family therapists in Philadelphia, he would ask his clients to practice doing bad therapy. There's something about doing something bad or wrong or unhelpful that is a fantastic source of learning. I remember talking to an elderly nun one day, and I said something to upset her, and she ripped into me. Don't you talk to me like that? You know, I felt like the penguin in the Blues Brothers. You know, I felt like I'd been wrapped over the knuckles with that. And justly so. I was disrespectful to her, unintentionally. But when she ripped into me like that, I apologised. I said, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to be... And she said, oh, that's okay, and off we went. But that mistake that I made, and I can't even remember what it was, but I did something that was offensive to her. That mistake informed me about how to be and how to work with her. And if we just play it safe, well, you know, we won't get hurt, but... You know, Bill O'Hanlon says the only difference between a rut and a grave is the depth. You know, if you just keep doing what you're doing, after a while you feel competent at that, but how relevant is that? That's the question. And for me, one of the core things here, Lawrence, is to own our humanity, that to be arrogant and say, I've got the answer, I can cure everybody. That arrogance, for me, is a total put-off. I can't abide it. But if someone can humble themselves and just rejoin the human race, like you and I know, that all we can do is offer some ideas, invite someone to something, and we'll do our very best to do that. But we can't cure anyone. We can't fix anyone. We can't resolve any issue that someone else has. Not any. And there's some humility in that, which for me is genuine. And to me, it's a way of engendering solid trust. If we say to someone, if someone says to me, oh, I can fix everything, they've lost my trust. I don't trust someone who says that. It's like a second-hand car salesman, you know. This car has had a one owner, an old lady. She never took it out of the garage. That might be my paranoid nature, Lawrence. Maybe I need some help with that. But I found that's helpful to me, and other people have said something similar.
You were talking before also about people that seem to go on course after course.
Mm.
And, you know, for me, that really kind of suggests that there's this I don't know enough going on for them, which is often, you know, related back to some form of shame message, some form of, you know, I must know more in order to have my ability to work with people be complete.
Yep. Well, I think that sense of shame, like I'm incomplete, it is firstly a human. You know, all of us have got defects. I mean, let's face it. if I told you all there is to know about me, you would never want to talk to me ever again. You'd say, get out of here. So I think shame and incompetence and self-doubt is human. The question I would like to explore is how relevant is that? If we are all incompetent, if we are all less than ideal, if none of us know everything that we can know about any area, if we know that, then trying to know more and more and more is a rabbit hole that we don't have to go down to, we have to go into. One of the most common responses that Erickson gave towards the end of his life, when people said, can you use this for this? Is this a good for that? The most common response he would offer was, I don't know. And for me, if the great purple God can say, I don't know, that gives me a lot of permission.
The great purple God. That's a brand new description I haven't heard before.
Well, I say that, but I could say that to him because he had a great sense of humour, and it was an interesting mix of chip on the shoulder, arrogance, and humility. He was a very humble person, and at the same time, other times he was very arrogant. He was a human being.
I'm fascinated though by that you described it as a chip on the shoulder arrogance. I had a supervision a few months back, and I was talking to my supervisor, and I said, you go onto social media, and I notice that there's many people out there who are happy to get online and to blow their own trumpet about their success story. Yeah. And in some cases, it's absolutely true. In some cases, they are actually doing really great work.
Yes.
And I said to my supervisor, I have to wonder, is it that slight arrogance? Is it that self-confidence that is helping them to deliver this great work because they're walking into the session thinking, I can help this person in my own way.
There you go.
I could do this. There's not a single person on this planet that I can't be with and not help in some way.
But I love the way you twisted that from arrogance to I'm arrogant enough to be able to help other people.
If it's helping someone else, I don't care if it's arrogance or not. At the end of the day, if it's helping someone, that's brilliant.
Exactly. And I mean, if you look at the word arrogance again, I'm sorry to be bringing up Latin all the time, but arrogance comes from regare, which means don't ask. Now, if you've already got the answer, don't ask. Now, an example of Erickson's arrogance in that sense, of having the answer, he was cross-examined in a court case, and the cross-examiner said, Dr. Erickson, who is the authority that you are quoting here? And Erickson said, I am the authority. I'm quoting myself. And he was. He was the authority. I can't remember what the field was, but he was the acknowledged authority in that field that he was giving evidence for. So he was owning his own status, his own knowledge base. He was owning it.
It's reminding me a bit of Oscar Wilde there. Remember the quote about anything to declare? Nothing but my brilliance, I think, was his response.
My superior intelligence, yes.
Yes.
Oh, that guy, he was...
amazing with the quotable quotes, wasn't he?
If you persist in telling the truth, sooner or later you are bound to be found out. That's one of the things that I, maybe falsely, but I comfort myself in talking about Erickson's work.
I think one of his other famous quotes that I love is, was it life is too short to be taken seriously? Or something along those lines. I'm paraphrasing there. But again, that reminds me always to be playful, to be curious and playful.
Now, when you bring playfulness into this, if you think of, normally we think of playfulness as something that happens with kids. Now, when kids are out and about playing with a box or playing with some mud or playing with something, they are not interested in confidence. They are just playing. And if it doesn't work, they do something else. And if that works, well, they keep doing that. And if that doesn't work, well, and so on. So there's flexibility and joy in playfulness, as distinct from our educational thing where you've got to get it right, otherwise you're in trouble. And getting it right means giving the answer to a question that I already have the answer to. That's not education, it's training. So we can all learn and be more effective, in my observation, and I think you seem to be agreeing here. The more playful we can be, the more useful and the more confident we can be, because you can only play if you're confident in the environment that you're in.
I was talking before about the mindsets that I use to get myself out of my rut when I do feel like I'm lacking that confidence, and it's the playfulness one. It's exactly that. Because, you talked about children playing. Not only do they play, if you watch a child building a sandcastle, the only thing they're focused on while building that sandcastle is building that sandcastle.
Exactly.
They're completely present to it and having an absolute ball. And I think the more that I remind myself to just play, to be curious and to explore, to be curious, to be in that moment and treat that moment like I'm building that sandcastle, and just to be there with it helps me enormously.
And kids building a sandcastle hasn't been to a workshop about how to build sandcastle. They haven't read textbooks about the theory of sandcastle.
And if it falls over, they laugh and they're just building again.
If a wave comes and smashes it, they might cry or be upset. But then that doesn't mean they'll never build sandcastles.
Castles again, exactly.
Might move it a bit further up the beach, or
it's just that shifting. That it's a very subtle shift too, but to just bring curiosity and playfulness. And again, I'm thinking of another quote. It's George Bernard Shaw. I'm trying to remember the quote. It's something along the lines of, we don't stop playing because we get old. We get old because we stop playing. And I think that's a valuable insight as well.
I'll have that. Do you mind if I borrow that one?
Go for it. I'm pretty sure. I didn't write it. Just to remind you, George Bernard Shaw did that one. It's a valuable one as well.
Yeah, exactly. And when you look at that issue of playfulness, Lawrence, where is confidence? Where is the concern of confidence? Where's the concern about, do I know enough? Am I enough? Is there something I should be ashamed of? When we're playing, where are those conversations?
This is the paradox of it, isn't it? Whenever I talk to someone about confidence, one of the things I remind them is that a confident person doesn't sit there thinking how confident they are. They're just doing it. It's just something they do. And because they're doing it, the confidence comes. So there is a paradox in this podcast title, in a sense that I'm aware that the confident hypnotherapist is not actually someone who sits there thinking that they're confident. It's someone who just goes, oh, I hadn't even thought about it. I just work with people and do what I do, and this is the outcome that I get.
Well, I think it's...
You're the first person to step onto that, though. No one else has raised the fact that there is a paradox in the title of this podcast.
I think there's a paradox if you think you're teaching confidence. But, people go to AA not so they can learn to drink. It's a way of being sober. So I think it's legitimate to speak about confidence as a concern that is around for everybody, even if in speaking about it we demolish it, even if we... And also, I think, as well as the paradox, if you play, you're not concerned about confidence. But I think there is something that we can explore, and as we are together, explore that how we can have, have the experience of actually being confident solidly, and that can be a result of playing. It also can be a result of us going to workshops or reading textbooks, not about theories, but how to listen, how to respond, how to be respectful, how to be curious, how to generate expectancy. Those are skills that if we learn them, they can add to our sense of confidence in our ability, as you mentioned before, in our ability to be useful for clients.
It probably would be fascinating to sit down and to look at the recipe of what would make a confident hypnotherapist. What are the ingredients that go into this hypnotherapist stew to, make whether it be the ability to listen, the ability to build rapport, the ability to ask right questions, all those sort of things. Because, for me, really, it comes down to if people are prepared to do that self-reflection as they do their work and to think, well, what is it that perhaps could have been done a little bit differently there? What is it that I feel might not have been at my best? And what can I do playfully to see about how I can learn this in a different way, or practice this in a different way, or explore this in a different way?
Well, I want to challenge you about the reflection. I know that the reflection is an important part of our learning, our focus, and it is obviously a source of learning, obviously. And to balance that, I'm informed again by Fernando Flores, who was the Chilean diplomat. But he said that if we engage in any activity recurrently, bushwalking, wine tasting, listening to music, if we engage in any activity recurrently, we develop sensitivities. Playing chess, over time, people see moves earlier on that they hadn't seen previously. And Fernando emphasizes that this happens without necessarily consciously reflecting on it. It can be a learning, if I can use the metaphor, it can be a learning in the body. It can be an experiential learning. Coming back to building sandcastles. Kids don't need to reflect on something. They just do something and then, and they automatically, when kids are learning to walk, they don't think, I move my left foot a little bit more or my right foot a little bit less. Somehow in the experience of learning to walk, that happens, that confidence, that competence, that experience happens without reflection. So it may be because I'm starting to experience the early signs of dementia that I like to leave reflection out of it, because I can my reflecting ability is a bit shot. But that's just an excuse, Lawrence. But I think, like you say, reflection can be a very rich source of learning. And also, I want to offer the idea that recurrent experience with a willingness to learn can allow us to develop sensitivity, so that without thinking, we automatically pause or ask this question. I think we've all had the experience when we're working with someone and things are really, really going along really well, where we say something and then, I don't know whether you ever had the thought, but where did that come from? Who said that? Sometimes things just happen in the flow that happen not through intention, not through choice, not through an act of will, but through experiential learning. Just somehow we've developed sensitivities. And that's a dilemma, because Scott Miller's work about feedback-informed therapy shows us that practice doesn't make perfect, it makes permanent. So if we just practice something over and over again, we will become really confident and competent in that area, not necessarily more responsive. So there's a particular mood or attitude that is required, it seems to me, in the recurrent practice. And that's like you were saying before about being curious, about being playful. If we are in that mood recurrently, then ideas, possibilities, things to say, stories to add, comments to make, silences to offer, whatever, they will happen somehow spontaneously without us needing to think about it.
I really love that whole notion of, I think one of the things you hear often is people say, you just need to practice, practice, practice.
Yes.
And I really love that twist on it about, well, you can practice, but you can also perhaps practice something that isn't going to necessarily be beneficial over time.
Exactly.
And I hadn't thought of it that way before. This is a new insight for me, so thank you for that. That's actually really fascinating.
I think it's something that I appreciate as an ongoing learning for me. Because we all get stuck in a rut. We all like, oh yes, this is the way you do things, and this is how it happens. And it's wonderful to be discombobulated from that. And it's like, oh, hang on, what was that? Where did that come from? So that's where the learning can happen. And it can happen through reflection. It's like, oh, that happened because of, oh, yeah. Okay, and next time I'll blah, 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 blah. Or it can be like, whoa, oh, okay. So anyone who's got a definitive answer here, Lawrence, or anyone who's got some solid advice to give, it's not worth listening to.
I think as complex human beings, there's never a one-size-fits-all kind of approach.
Exactly.
Anyway, no matter what technique or approach you use for your clients or for yourself, we're all complex with our own vulnerabilities and insecurities and beliefs and strengths and all that sort of thing that we need to work with.
I think it was the second time I visited Erickson in 1978. There was a group of us there, maybe half a dozen or 8, and he started on the Monday by saying, when a client comes to see you, you need to know about where they are in their family, their educational background, whether they're brought up in the country or the city, their ethnic background. You need to know the whole context. That was the beginning of the day's teaching. And I thought, oh, that makes perfect sense. The context is, oh, yes, okay, good. Tuesday, he started by saying, when a client comes to see you, you don't worry about the family or where they've come from, you just work with what's in front of you. And I thought, oh, damn, I've left it too long. He's lost it. And he hadn't lost it. He was just refusing to be consistent because, like you said, people are not consistent within themselves and between each other. We've got a lot in common, but we're also distinct. So I think that flexibility is, and coming back to your playfulness, an essential component of playfulness is being flexible and being curious.
And being creative as well, I imagine, to be able to bring that.
Exactly that. If someone comes to a game and they're going to play and they already know how it's going to work out, boy, is there going to be some frustration and some discord with that. It's going to be a war. It's called a marital dispute, then when you get two people who know that they're right and the other one's wrong. It's called a relationship problem. We all have it.
I think we all have the ability to be creative too. I challenge any grown man that has a little girl walk up to him and hand him an imaginary phone not to answer that imaginary phone. No matter how big and tough and rough they look, it's almost like it's triggered automatically within them to do that. But we do have the ability to be imaginative and creative in the moment and just to explore in that moment what it is that bubbles to the surface.
And the willingness to do that, Lawrence, the willingness to do that is something to attend to, something to explore. And for me, it leads directly to an experience of solid, real, genuine confidence, not the pretense ones like Muhammad Ali, I am the greatest. And there's a paradox. I am the greatest. Sounds like arrogance. Actually, no, he was the greatest. He was just telling the truth. And he was also humble. He was a human being. He was a humble fellow.
So the big question is, how do we all become the Muhammad Ali of hypnotherapy? So,
Lawrence, perhaps we already are.
Perhaps
we already are.
Yep. It's just acknowledging it and owning it and believing it. That's
all. And then when we think, what are the characteristics of the greatest hypnotherapist? Are they translucent? Do they have a glowing background that follows them like a halo behind them, so that they're...
I have been referring to this as my messiah. Yeah, if we get the head right, it's almost like a halo going on.
So maybe it's a matter of having the right background, the right context.
Maybe. I don't know. I've got a few virtual backgrounds here, depending on what conversation I'm having. So, yeah.
The background is perfect and as a component if it's useful and if it's playful. Like you said before about, who was it that you quoted? Bernard Shaw, was it about you go old because you stop being playful, was it?
Yes, we don't stop playing because we get old. We get old because we stop playing.
I remember working with a little kid. She was maybe 9. And she'd had nightmares every night for about 3 months because she'd watched a horror movie. Somehow she'd watched Jaws, and she was having nightmares that sharks were going to get her. Anyhow, this little tot comes in and climbs up on the chair, and I asked her, what do you like doing? And she said, I've been reading Harry Potter. So I said, can we play a game? And kids are usually up for playing a game. So she said, yeah, that'll be fine. So I said, could you just close your eyes and just imagine for a moment that you are Harry Potter's sister. You're not a muggle, you're a wizard. She had a bit of a grin on her face. She quite liked that. And I invited her to take out her wand and make a spell so that she'd be safe from the sharks. And she had this great grin on her face. And I said, what are you doing? And she said, I've just surrounded myself with a white light. I said, what's that going to do? I was very dubious about the whole thing. And she said, oh, that'll protect me. And then she said, I'm bringing the sharks in. They're trying to bite through the white light. They're getting frustrated. They're getting bored. Now they're going away. She opened her eyes. So this is about 5 minutes into the session. And I said to her, if you're swimming and the lifeguard says there's a shark in the water, get out of the water. Don't surround yourself with a white light. And she looked at me like I was some idiot. And she said, I know, like a stupid idiot. So she knew that the white light was something that she created for her nightmares and that it wasn't going to work in the water. And anyhow, after that, I think the whole conversation lasted somewhere between 5 and 10 minutes. After that, she never had any more nightmares. That was it. She just needed to have the ability to use her imaginary curiosity, creative capacity to do what she was good at, and there you go.
The ironic thing is that as a child, I saw Jaws and was terrified by it. But the result was that I wouldn't eat flake for a while because I discovered it was shark. So I'm not quite sure how in my childhood mind being terrified of sharks eating me meant that I could not eat sharks. But
from the inside or something, who knows? But it made some connection. One of my kids used to have nightmares that a train was going to come and eat her. I remember thinking, wow, a train eating someone, what's that? And then I heard her listening to Play School, and there was a song about a choo-choo train. And so she heard choo-choo train.
Of course, that makes sense.
Makes sense to a child.
I wondered if her surname was Cole for a second.
And my youngest came home from school the first day, and he said, I've learnt the Australian national anthem. And he was very proud to let us know what the words were. And he said, Australians all eat ostriches. So he'd heard Australians all let us rejoice. Didn't make any sense to him. So in his creative childhood way, Australians all eat ostriches. That made perfect sense to him. So kids have got this ability, not only kids, by the way, use their imagination to create problems. You created, from George, you created Don't Eat Play. But people create problems like I'm not sure that I know enough to be a good hypnotherapist. That's created. So if we've got that ability to create something, we've got the ability to create. And then the question is, how can we use it?
It's been absolutely fantastic chatting to you as always, Rob. If people wanted to reach out to you to either say hello or to explore some of the trainings that you do offer, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Well, probably email is the best thing. It's just Rob, R-O-B, at cet.net.au. And on Facebook, there's an Ericksonian learning community that people are welcome to join. But at that website, there's some resources that people could explore.
You've always been extremely generous in terms of what you offer to anyone interested in this topic, whether it be free online courses or a massive amount of videos or even free ebooks over time. So thank you so much for that.
That's a pleasure, Lance. And, I'm a homebody. Nothing pleases me more than to just be around the folks here and dig in the garden and walk the dogs. But if someone anywhere in the world is interested to learn this, I'm on a plane. Well, I was. I'm not sure that it'll ever happen again. But in June I was supposed to be in Manchester and Helsinki and in the Czech Republic and Copenhagen, and then in July I was supposed to be in Brazil. But of course, none of that's happening. And I don't particularly want to go to any of those places. But if they're interested, I'll go. And for me, it was a real privilege to have the chance of spending some time with Milton Erickson in the last 3 or 4 years of his life. It was a privilege. And out of that privilege, there's been a kind of something verging on a compulsion. I'm a bit like I'm coming back to the Blues Brothers. I'm on a mission. So just put me in front of someone who's interested, and I'm up for it. And I really appreciate your invitation, because you're very generous in the way that you make these conversations available to people, and the warm way that you invite anyone to be in a conversation. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. I really appreciate that, those kind words too. For everyone watching, I hope you've gained some reframe, some insight, something that makes you put a smile on your face and want to go out and play. And I hope you'll join us for the next episode sometime soon. In the meantime, take care.